The Cats Whiskers podcast is proudly sponsored by the Bunkers Hill Hockley. Don't miss Panthers game day offers, including Coors Light at £2.50 a pint. Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Cats Whiskers podcast. My name is Jono Bullard. Things not going too well for the Nottingham Panthers throughout December, and we're going to have a bit of a roundtable discussion, which is a departure away from how we normally do things on here. Around the table tonight are Aaron Lord.
Good evening.
Antoine Marie-Jeanne.
Hello.
Adam Reddish.
Evening, folks.
And Paul Balm.
Hello.
So, as I said, it's just going to be a round-table discussion, but the way it has gone so far, Panthers in the last 4 games, a 2-1 Challenge Cup loss in Milton Keynes in the first leg of the quarter-final of the Challenge Cup last Friday. That was followed by a 2-1 shootout defeat at home to Manchester the next night. And then, well, what can be said about the 2 Christmas games? A 4-0 loss at Sheffield, followed by a 5-0 loss against Sheffield at the NIC, in probably one of the worst, if not the worst, performances by a Panthers team in recent memory. And guys, what can we say about this? In the past 4 games, we've conceded 13 and scored 2. We haven't won a game in 8. What has gone wrong in your opinion? And Aaron, we'll start with you.
I don't know. I mean, it's just so hard to pinpoint, what has actually gone wrong, apart from, the obvious thing of people just aren't scoring goals. I went to the MK game and I thought, the first 5 to 10 minutes, I thought there was a good reaction from the boys and it seemed like they were up for it. They were finishing checks and there was a bit of energy in there. But as soon as we conceded a goal, it just seemed that it just sucked the life out of everybody. And I honestly don't know what has gone wrong, apart from it just looks like nobody's really grabbing any game by the scruff of the neck. Nobody's kind of standing up and going, look, we're in a right pickle here, boys, and I'm going to get us out of it. And, confidence is just shot. You only really have to look at how people are standing, or some players are standing on the blue line, before when the national anthem's going. It's like we've already accepted that we're not going to score, and that means we're not going to win. So I don't know. We've fallen off a cliff massively, and it's a cliff that I didn't see coming, if I'm honest, and I'm happy to admit that. And I think we're still falling. We haven't hit. I know there's an article in the Post about hitting rock bottom, but I'm now fearing that we're still falling and we've yet to hit that rock bottom, unfortunately.
Yeah, Paul, do you think there's further to slide, or can it only go up from here? After the game against Sheffield at the NIC, surely the only way is up, or can it get worse?
I don't know about it. Can it get worse? I think all the signs are there that it can continue. I just don't. You can't see where the next goal's coming from. Look at last night. We never looked like scoring. Was it 15 shots?
15 shots on goal at home. 6 after the first 2 periods. Now, that for me is completely and utterly unacceptable.
Yeah, put it into context. This podcast has probably been going about 4 minutes so far. In that time, we had 1 shot. Yeah, just think about that. 1 shot every 4 minutes
at home.
And, well, it doesn't matter where it is. But it's just this. Well, I said last night this podcast was either going to be full of a lot of swearing, and we'll get on to Ant in a minute, or it will be full of strange sort of noises that people make when they can't actually think of anything to say, or some dead air and strange sort of noises. And as that is proven to be the case, I was at a loss last night, and I'm still at as much of a loss as to where this is going. This is the team, if team's still the right word, that beat Bern, that beat Turku, that beat Mountfield twice, that disgraced themselves against Zurich, and to then be given what? I mean, I've been, ever since that game finished, I've been racking my brains to think of one that's worse. I mean, no doubt in all the years I've been watching, I've seen worse. I must have done, but I can't remember him. I've seen all sorts of. I mean, it was different in the days. It was a lot higher scoring, but at least those teams, when they were getting beaten, they had some fight about them. Some passion. We just looked dead in the water from the very first minute. It was men against boys, and if Sheffield were any good themselves, they'd have absolutely destroyed us, even more than they did.
I mean, that's the point, isn't it? And it's not the fact you lose, you can take losing. And I thought, as hard as the Manchester game was to take, it was that they left everything out on the ice. They just couldn't score. There was a hell of a lot of effort. I think these two games against Sheffield, they just looked like they didn't care, and that for me is unforgivable. There was just no effort. Nobody seemed to be trying. Nobody seemed to be showing any leadership.
Well, how many times did we say that last season? And I think for me that's the most disappointing. I think I'm hurting more this season because of the promise that we showed earlier on. I mean, Paul has already mentioned those games in the CHL. And yes, we weren't blowing teams away, but we had that sort of never say die attitude. It didn't matter if we went 1-0 down, 2-0 down. You had belief in the team. You had belief that they would, try and get back, and we'd get a goal out of nothing. And now it's, as I said yesterday before the game, I said I was going to walk out if it got to 2-0 to Sheffield, and I still had half a pint left when Sheffield's second goal went in, so it was a couple of minutes after that. But I personally have no belief at all in this team anymore, and that's it's really sad. It's really upsetting because of how well we were doing, pre-December.
And like you, I did something I'd never done before. I walked out after 2 periods because the team looked like they couldn't be bothered, so why should I be bothered to sit there and watch us be humiliated by our biggest rivals, who are frankly bang average this season?
Exactly. We'll go and listen to some tunes and drink a couple of pints in bunkers. So.
Yeah. I mean, Adam, how do you sum it up? What do you think is the cause of this rot?
Well, I don't know whether we can say that it's one thing. It might well be a culmination of several factors, but I've just never known a team to lose form as quickly as this side.
Well, let me give you some stats. I mean, on the 3rd of December, Panthers had just beaten the Brea Clan 3-0 away and were 2 points clear at the top of the Elite League with games in hand. Yeah,
and the contrast between that side and the side that skated out for the 2 games against Sheffield, I can't fathom in my head. It's as if those players that won away at Braehead have been kidnapped and they're all bound and gagged in somebody's warehouse, and we've got their identical twins that have never skated in their lives before on the ice. I just
Space Jam type thing.
Yeah.
Aliens have come and taken their mojos.
Yeah. But they've just had every ounce of enthusiasm, confidence, talent just drained out of them. And I don't know what it is or how anything can be so so big and so influential that it can have that sort of effect on an entire roster. Well, save for about 2 or 3 players. But it's absolutely puzzling. And, I'm not alone. I know you guys are equally as puzzled. And, looking on social media, I think most of the fan base is puzzled by, how much of a U-turn this side's done. And Paul mentioned it earlier. I mean, what makes it really, really, quite galling for me is that we know these guys have got skill by the bucket load. We saw that in the games in the Champions Hockey League. We saw that in quite a few early games in the league season. So, why have they chosen to not display that level of skill and the level of commitment that, we all saw in the CHL? I mean, some of us were over in Zurich, and, that was one of the most gutsiest Panthers performances I think I've ever seen in all my years watching ice hockey. So, to go from the highs of that to the lows of what we've experienced over Christmas, I know I think it was Aaron, mentioned falling off a cliff. It's worse than falling off a cliff. It's like we've fallen from space. I can't put my finger on it.
I mean, it is an alarming loss of form and an alarming loss of almost seemingly talent. Because in November we was winning games. There was depth throughout the squad. Everybody was scoring. Everybody was contributing. I think I said on one podcast that I don't see any weakness throughout any part of this team.
There's nothing to complain about.
Yeah,
absolutely nothing to moan about at all.
And I've seen some people said, "Oh well, it's been like that since the end of the CHL." But I disagree with that, because, as I say, the 3rd of December when we went top of the league, 2 points clear, was a month after the CHL had finished, and that team was seemingly doing really, really well. And I know we called it a blip after the next sort of couple of defeats, which has turned into a slump, and I know we got an awful lot of criticism for that. But I honestly thought it was a blip, because even after the 2 defeats, we were still in a really good position with games in hand. Now we're in freefall. We've gone down to 6. We're 10 points behind the leaders, Cardiff, in a matter of 2 weeks. And I'm like you. I'm just at a complete loss as to where it's come from. I just don't understand what has happened. Now, the only thing we can do is speculate, but it's all we can do. What do we think has happened? I'll throw that open to anyone.
I wish I
did. Again, I don't think it's a single thing. I don't think it's a single thing, or it's at least not a single thing that we can pinpoint. I'll throw these out. Nielsen has lost the dressing room. There is somebody in the dressing room who is causing problems, or something else has gone on behind the scenes. I mean, Braid are in a similar situation. Have they all been told that Neil Black's not paying them a Christmas bonus this year? That's a bit of a conspiracy theory, but for it to be so many people at once, I don't know. And
have they lost the motivation because they all got a lot more of a challenge out of playing much superior opposition? When we were in the CHL, and
again,
now because these guys might think that they're on a different level to blokes playing for the other elite league teams, do they see themselves as a bit more superior so they don't have to put the effort in? But we saw the effort going in, didn't we? All around the CHL games, the effort was being put in by the players. I know we weren't blowing teams away, 7-8 goals every week, but we were doing enough to win comfortably. And it's staggering, really, how there's been such a marked difference in attitude. Because ultimately, I think that's what I've noticed the most. It's the attitude and it's how the players carry themselves on the ice that is the biggest sort of visual clue that something is not right behind the scenes. Because even if all wasn't well in the camp and maybe the locker room was not a happy place, you still have 3 or 4 players that would have come out and say, right, personal and professional pride, I'm going to come out here. There's a lot of guys that have followed us around over Christmas. I'm going to come out And, if it was Gagnon, have a fight, in the first few minutes. Or, if it's Mok Shantsev, produce a little bit of magic like we've seen him do a few times already this season. But everyone's just put the sort of competitiveness and compete level away. They've just locked it away. And we've got shadows skating around the ice. Guys that just don't look interested and don't look like they want to be there. And they seemed a really tight-knit group a few weeks ago. I think we commented on this show a few times how together the guys looked, when goals were scored, the way they celebrated. And, when there was trouble on the ice, guys would be quick to, get other guys back. But that's gone. And it's just drained away so quickly. I can't even really sort of make any assumptions about what's happened, because it just seems like everything bad has happened simultaneously. And that's absolutely unprecedented in the time of watching Panthers for me. I've never seen a side drained of energy, talent and commitment in such a short period of time as this Panthers team.
I thought it's funny you mentioned that, Adam, because it's one thing that I noticed. I think I said to you when we played Sheffield on the 2nd of December, when they were going through a slump and their fans were screaming for Paul Thompson to be let go of his duties. And I said to you when their players came onto the ice, look at the body language, look at them.
Yeah.
And they look like a beaten team when they came onto the ice. And that's how we're looking now. It's almost as if we're beaten before a puck is even dropped. And that proved the case over these two Christmas games, because they were a beaten side before a puck had even hit the ice. Yeah.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, mate.
One of the things that gets me about this team is that if the opposition turn up to fight for a game, they'll beat us. No doubt. Any 50-50 puck, the opposition will win, because we don't seem to have the energy or the willingness to go in there and get it. The number of times we've been beaten because the opposition player gets to the puck first, because we're stood there waiting for it to come to us, not going out and trying to get it. And that's what gets me. That it just seemed like so lifeless. So sometimes it looks like the effort's not being put in. I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. I'm just the man sitting in the seat, paying me money to get in. But that's just how it looks to me. That we should be fighting for everything, and we're not.
Well, I think the key thing there, Paul, is I read a story on the Panthers website a few days ago, and it was Evan Moses saying that he wanted the team to get their swagger back. That sort of swashbuckling style of hockey they were playing earlier in the season. And I'm thinking to myself, but you can't just switch from being a team badly out of form to getting that swagger back. You've got to earn the right to play hockey. You've got to fight and graft before you start to bring out the stylish and creative stuff. And I don't see the players wanting to put the effort in. I might be doing them a disservice. I'm sure they train hard, but the most visible thing for us fans, like you said, the people sat in the seats watching on a game night, is how much effort they look like they're putting in. And to be honest, 3/4 of the roster look like they're missing in action. They've gone AWOL, because we're seeing no signs of any effort, or very minimal signs of effort, from players just in normal hockey situations. Second to every puck, reluctant to go into the corner, to maybe have the body laid on them and a check, turning shots down, making passes when passes aren't needed. It's just everything is wrong. And it's probably easier to crack the Da Vinci Code than to work out what's gone wrong with this team.
No, Tom Hanks managed that. One thing I do want to say, and this is something that's been echoed in a lot of the comments we've had, and we have had a lot of comments. We've had, strangely enough, we've had more comments than
we've ever had, haven't we?
Before, yeah. I mean, I'm it's over 60. And one of the themes that goes through that is about how well Garnett played, and I suppose in a way had to play. I mean, Garnett stands on his head. Mike Garnett, best of, I assume they mean shot bunch, would have been double figures without him. I said, well, it could be shot. A lot of people spell shot wrong. Only Garnett worthy of a score over 3. Garnett was the only player who turned up yesterday. He alone saved us from being drubbed by a double-figure margin. Thank God for Garnett. Could have been so much worse. There's a theme there, isn't there? And and I thought, I know I've been talking a lot, and I'll let other people have a go, honestly. But I think they're right. Without Garnett, it could have been 10, especially. Probably in the going back to the Manchester game, he made some really big saves in that, and the game before that as well to keep us even close. And without him, we'd have been in an absolute mess. I think.
And I think you're absolutely right, because Michael Garnett has been. You can't bring him in for the criticism that the team are rightly getting, because he's basically been keeping the score down single-handedly. Mm-hmm. I mean, to be fair, 13 goals in 4 games he's conceded is a goals against average of 3.25, which isn't great, but it's not bad. But the team have been. Sorry, say that again.
I'd have probably only blamed him for one last night, because he does have a tendency when he's going to cover a post to lean forward. He's given a couple of goals up like that from a very tight angle over his shoulder, but that's a very small thing compared to everything else that we're talking about tonight.
Okay, some of the other comments that we've been getting, and I'll read a few out, and it's like, do we really have to do this? What a pathetic display by the whole team, completely lacklustre, and I've never been so disappointed to call myself a Panthers fan. Pay a fortune week in, week out and over the season to follow this side, just so we finish mid-table each season. Trying to live off the CHL, but sorry, that doesn't make a season. Enough is enough. Big changes need to take place. Club doesn't care as long as they keep milking us dry for the whole season. This is something I've been seeing a lot today about the club doesn't care, all they care about is milking the fans dry. I mean, Aaron, I'll bring you in. Is that how you guys feel?
Look, I think everybody connected with that club, I think, will be hurting right now. I don't think anybody associated with that club would have woke up, sort of this morning and gone, what we're going to do today? Shall we go out and play golf? And, I'm going to go and do some shopping. I think everybody will have the 2 results on their mind. Will some people be hurting more than others? Then yes, because that's just how the world works. I think that's all I can really say on that, to be honest, because I don't think there's people there that don't really care about the club, and their first focus is, purely money. Everybody at that club have different job roles that have different criterias and different targets to meet, etc. So, for people, let's say management, let's just call them that, off-ice management and stuff. Their job is to get people through the door. Does that mean when we get stuffed 4-0 and 5-0 against Sheffield that they're not hurting? I don't think they're not hurting. They might be hurting less than, a player that's played in it or even the coach. I don't know how bad they are hurting, but I don't think, there's people at that club that have just got their feet up right now thinking the world's honky-dory and everything connected with the Nottingham Panthers is running, smoothly and seamlessly. So I think that's just the way I'd look at it. I think people are hurting at different levels.
I'm just going through the comments, and like you touched on, there's a lot aimed at not necessarily Corey, which is a surprise. There are obviously a few comments about whether it's time for Corey to go, etc., which you would expect in any sport when a team's going for a slump like we are. But there are a lot that are pointing the finger at higher than that, and I know obviously Brock Wilson put that tweet out.
Well, yes,
which is mentioned.
Yeah, no, because I've actually got that all cranked up ready.
Well, there we are. Do you want to read it?
Yeah. So for those that haven't seen it, Brock Wilson tweeted after the game last night, and no, Brock, I haven't spoken to him for a couple of days, but
that'll be that restraining order he's got on.
But he has been on this show quite a few times, and he wrote this after the game last night. He says Corey is the easy target, and the issue isn't him. All he's done is win whilst in Nottingham and has given a lot of players second life. There's an elephant in the room that everyone seems to be afraid to talk about or address, and it's higher than Corey. The guy took them to the knockout round amongst the best teams in Europe. What needs to change is above. There seems to be an attitude of sucking the fans dry at every amount of money that the club can without actually giving a thing about its fan base. I've not said much about it. Yeah, shot, yes. Not said much about it, but it needs to be addressed. The arrogance reeks. No one person is bigger than the game, and when you have people in charge who think they are, they lose sight of what's important. Winning, community, and the people who pay to walk through your doors night in and night out. Accountability needs to be held, and it starts from the top. But then again, my words will probably go in and out because it's an old boys club, and when you're making money, why change, right? And, that's some very strong words from Brock Wilson there, but the thing is, the club are making money, they are getting people through the doors. And I suppose the other question is the incentive there to change? Because people are still coming in their droves. We had a full house last night. I think there was a big crowd of 5,500 the Saturday before Christmas. I'm sure there'll be another big crowd there on Saturday against Coventry. From that point of view, the club is making a lot of money. Why do they need to change?
Yeah, but we had these questions again last season, didn't we? And you look at things that have improved off. Last season we've been calling out for proper strength and conditioning coaches. We've got a full team on board with that now. So there are things that have changed for the better. But obviously, with this, I'm with Aaron. There's no way in hell that the likes of Gary and Neil are not sitting there and they are not hurting, because they are as big a fans of the club as anybody, to be fair. You only have to listen to Moran's commentary when he actually does commentary, how excited and passionate he is about the Panthers. And yes, this will be hurting them, but is the incentive there to do better? I know Corey's interview in the Post, he says that we've been looking for up to 2 new players, since before Christmas. So, he's obviously realised that we need to bring players in, like we've said, and other people have said. We'd like extra players in, but it's just frustrating, isn't it? When you see other players, you see other teams that are able to bring players in. Now, I know Sheffield were waiting seemingly forever to get their replacement D-man in, but then generally other teams have got their players in fairly quickly, and we're at that waiting game again.
That's the thing.
Frustrating.
Evan Mosey's been out since the Sheffield game on the 2nd of December with no sign of replacement. Patrick Galbraith has been out for at least 2 or 3 weeks. However, the thing with Patrick Galbraith is that we have got Michael Garnett and Sam Gospel. Yep. So yeah, that's probably too much to expect another netminder to come in. But Evan Mosey is an important player, and strangely enough, this complete slump in form seems to have coincided with him not being in the team. Now, one man doesn't make a team, but
we beat Brayhead without him.
Yeah, but
that's not saying a lot with Brayhead's current form as well. But
that's probably another thing we'll get onto. We've got to get onto shortly. But Evan Mosey has not been in the team. We've not been winning. Is he that important a component, or is that just a coincidence?
It's a coincidence.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Fair enough.
If we're relying,
You have to ask, John. You have to ask.
with all due respect, I think everybody, we're everybody's a fan of Evan Mosey, and we know what he brings to this team. But if Panthers, as a club, as an organisation, as a team, are that reliant on one person, then there's something deeply wrong, probably even worse than we, fear, because you just can't be reliant on, that one person. Now,
it's working okay for Edmonton, isn't it, with Conor McDavid?
Well,
McDavid doesn't play, Edmonton lose. That's the general rule.
Even if you get this,
we're maybe a few, leagues lower than that. But I just think, look, would he make a difference? Of course he would. That's why when the option to re-sign him there was many elite league clubs wanting to sign him. But come on, you're telling me that if Evan was on that team, we wouldn't be talking about the rut that we're in, etc. We still would have lost games. We still might have not been scoring goals, etc.
Well, he can only play on one line at a time, can't he?
Well, yeah, I mean,
and only take one shift at a time.
Yeah, I know he's Speedy Gonzalez and can play forward and can play D. But I mean, come on, we're not that reliant on one guy. Yes, we've missed him 100%. But are we then saying that when he eventually comes back, it's all going to be rosy again and we're going to go on a 10-game winning streak? No, it's a coincidence.
Okay. One of the other things, and one of the other comments that we've had, he says, I've never been one to call for Corey's head, but I was genuinely concerned watching him on the bench last night. He looked a shell of himself. Both him and Rick stood there barely communicating to the team, nor did Clark or Lee offer any form of leadership. They seemed devoid of ideas on how to turn this around. What happened to the Corey who only last season stopped a game and ordered a referee to measure Cardiff's sticks in defence of the team? I do not see how a team whose confidence is completely on the floor has any chance of picking it back up again when their supposed seniors offer zero guidance. So, thoughts on that? Go on, Adam.
Well, I think you've got to meet in the middle somewhere because, yes, ultimately the coach assembles the roster and he sorts out all the systems and the players, etc. But the players have got, as I said earlier, they've got to have a bit of professional pride. They're going out there yesterday in front of a full arena. A lot of people might be there for the first time this year or second time. But you as a player surely want to put on a show for a big crowd. Because if you don't, then I think you probably got no business being a professional sports person. Corey might have cut a fairly downcast demeanour yesterday, behind the bench. But what else really are people expecting Corey to be like at the moment? Yeah, it might have been nice if he'd just been a bit more vocal, perhaps. Shouting a few things to the players, geeing them up. Surely he'll know better than anybody, what it takes to get certain players motivated. And maybe he's tried that. We don't know what happens away from the arena. We don't know what happens during training. We're not privy to that. And he might have, had individual meetings with players. He might have tried to, get the guys together to do a bit of team bonding. We don't know. Everyone seemed fairly happy for the Christmas video, didn't they? It didn't strike you as a sort of roster that was at each other's throats. So, and that's just another sort of dimension to it all. And it's all adding to this really complex puzzle as to why things have gone the way they've gone, because it seems every now and then that it can't be confidence, but then you play a game like yesterday and the day before and then you think, well, it must be confidence. And Corey's got a part to play, but I still maintain that players have got to go out there, and even if they feel they're not getting the leadership from behind the bench and from the coaching staff, you go out there and you show what you're all about as a professional sports person, and you put on a show for the fans, the people that actually pay your wages. Because if they've got a gripe with Corey, or if they feel that they're being badly coached, then, to be honest, they ought to be maybe putting in for a transfer somewhere else or being asked to be released. because I don't think it's fair on themselves as sportsmen, and it's certainly not fair on the fans that have been to watch the Panthers for the last 5 or 6 home games that have, witnessed by and large, utter tosh and really substandard displays. So I don't think it's all on Corey. I think the players have certainly got to look at themselves and pull the socks up in more than one instance. But yeah, I think to lay the blame solely and squarely at Corey's feet or the coaching staff's feet is, personally, I think that's wide of the mark. I don't buy that. I think the guys need to show more. Even if they don't feel things are going right, and they're not getting the guidance, you go out there, you make a good play, you deliver a bone-crushing check, or you just get shots on goal. And nothing like that's happening. Players aren't robots. If Nielsen tells them to do something and they go out on the next shift and does something different because they think it might make a bit of a difference, to deviate from what the main plan is, then great, do that. You might get a bit of a, yelling at when you return to the bench at the end of your shift, but at least you can say that you've tried to make a difference. I don't see that with some of these players. I'm not saying they're bad players, but I'm saying that they're just playing within themselves. And we know that they can do more. We know that they've got talent. We know that they've got heart and spirit. We saw that earlier in the season. So we just want to see more of that. And if the coaching staff have tried everything within their sort of reasonable powers to get that back from the players and to, inject it into some of the recent performances and it's failed, then, no wonder Corey's talking about bringing a couple of new players in to freshen the side up, because we need fresh blood and this team needs a whole new direction based on the last 7 or 8 games.
Is that sort of all that's needed, though? Because we've heard this mention of 2 new players, but will that cause enough of a shake-up? Can you see people or players being sacked or released?
When's the cut-off date for transfers?
I believe it's now the middle of February, something like the 15th of February, I think.
So it may have an effect until the middle of February then.
Yeah.
If there are players who are happy to sit and coast, as soon as the middle of February comes, they know they're not going anywhere, so they'll just revert to it. But I mean, I said last night, and this may be a slightly, well, curled that out. It's really that controversial, but I don't care if the players coming in. I don't care that they have to be better. Because, everybody, it's always the argument, you can't get better players this time of year, or this, that, and the other. I think somebody, this team right now needs the shake-up that is somebody gets fired, somebody gets benched. Because when has anybody ever been benched for doing anything bad on this team this year or last year or whenever? We don't have big enough depth, and that's the problem. But I mean, but then there's also the question of, people like Tetlow, Kelsall, Hazeltine, they've got other commitments with clubs. But Nielsen should be trying to use that, play them for a shift or 2, to give a jolt to the players that aren't performing. I mean, not that this is because they aren't performing, but why has Gospel not got any time in the last 2 games? There were times when both those games were gone, completely gone, and surely, okay, it's all right. It's not the best time to put Gospel, in behind a team who aren't performing. But again, it might be the jolt that's needed. The thing that worries me is that nothing. It seems like nothing's being tried. I mean. I think Evan Mosey apparently said on the commentary last night that they've tried something different about trying to get more shots through traffic. Well, I'm sorry, that wasn't working.
We are all at a loss as to why this has happened. But another thing, going back to bringing 2 new guys in, is could it give them a jolt where you just turn around to one of the players who aren't performing and say, "You're a healthy scratch tonight.
Exactly.
Don't bother getting dressed."
Yeah.
We've got a new player. Is that the sort of jolt that they need, where everybody is looking around and thinking, "Hang on, my job's under threat. I've got to start performing now."
I think that's what you've got to do. I mean, all right, not for the next couple of games, because we won't be able to do that, as I'm sure we'll get onto in a minute. But that's the sort of thing you've got to do. You've got to have the for want of the better word, balls to go right. Regardless of what this will do, you're sitting down. Don't bother turning up. Oh, sounds like we've finally got somebody who knows what they're talking about appearing. And just to give, something's got to be done to give them a jolt. What that is, I don't know, but we've got to try something, because right now, whatever it is we're trying ain't working.
I think the thing is, Jono, as well, though, I think if you spoke to a handful of players, I think they would say the same as what we're saying. I don't even think they know what kind of has gone wrong. I think they'll say that they're trying to score goals, or they're trying to play like they used to play, etc. But it isn't working now, and I think some of the players would say the same. They just don't know what is kind of going wrong or what has gone wrong, and that's not nice to say or hear anyway, is it really? Because you always like to think as a fan that the players know what they need to do to turn it around, but I think it's kind of, we're in that bad of a situation that I just think some of the players don't even know what can change or what they can do to make it any different, because I think they've just lost belief, or they've lost trust in their ability, and that's why I think we see some of the players that we're seeing. I think that's why we see the kind of ill discipline that we've had of recent. It's just silly mistakes that we just weren't making when we were a team that was winning.
And is that the sort of stuff that's coming out of frustration? The lack of discipline?
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Paul, to be fair. I think that's bang on, really. I think it's just, they cough up a puck or like last night, Sheffield plays, finishes their checks and, let's be honest, Rob Farmer gets put on his arse by Ben O'Connor, and then he goes and slashes somebody blatant, centre ice pretty much, and we go on the PK again. And I agree with what, like Corey says in one of the Nottingham Post articles. We've been taking that many penalties of recent times that we're not seeing half the players on the roster, because all we're seeing is Lacko and Bettridge, and then it's Lindhagen and Brown. They're playing probably most minutes of late, because they're the two top line PKers from the forwards. You're not seeing, your Shalley, your Phillips, your Pellini, those type of players at the moment, because they're sat on the bench because our PK units are out, because we're making silly mistakes out of frustration, and that's not great either, is it?
No. I have looking at the comments though, found one reason why this might be happening. Apparently, there's still no decaf coffee available in the arena, so that might be why there's a certain amount of sluggishness.
We cannot legislate for the type of comments we get. We do get
all the ones
odd ones. Yeah. We do get some odd ones. Just another comment. This is the general consensus is that real change will only come about by hitting Neil Black in the pocket. A boycott of 50-50 tickets and shirt off his back tickets is surely the only way forward, as he has already banked the season ticket money. Both Panthers and Clan are also rans every season, and the common denominator is Mr. Black. So, is that fair? Is that what should happen? A boycott? Would that? I've seen it a lot, especially on the cage today, about people saying, well, just don't go, just don't turn up, just don't buy tickets. But does that help? I mean, for me, I like going. I support the team. I love the team. I love hockey. And that's why I go. I don't think I could just stop going. Having said that, I don't think I'm going to go to the Milton Keynes game in the Cup, even though I could, because at the moment I just don't think it's worth it, because I just, for the reason that I walked out of the game yesterday, the team didn't seem bothered, so why the hell should I be? And
they didn't think you'd left.
Well, it was funny, a lot of people left with a lot of the game to go. There was a lot of people left at the end of the second period.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I don't think there'd have been half as many people as there were in at the end if there hadn't been the set two right near the end. And to be honest, I mean, I tweeted it out, yesterday, both about the fact that I really wasn't sure whether I wanted to go to the game last night, and I definitely won't be going to the Milton Keynes one. I'm sorry, I'm perfectly able to go, but I'm sorry, I just don't want to.
I don't think there's going to be a big crowd on for that game at all. I just think it's come close just after Christmas. Obviously, playoff tickets are going to be going on sale in a couple of weeks, so people have got that, to pay for as well. I just can't see it being, it wasn't just. I mean, I wasn't the first one out the door yesterday. As early as I left, I wasn't the first one out the door. And I know from the group that I went with, not one of them was in the arena by the time the game finished. Most of them left at the end of the second. And I just think, I don't agree with the whole boycotting side of things. I mean, I've seen an interesting Twitter exchange with Brock again, with our mate Sean from Cardiff, about how they voted with their feet when Mr. Secret Millionaire was in charge at Cardiff. But if it wasn't then for Kelman and his group coming in, that almost killed the club. And part and parcel of being a sports fan is taking these hits and getting up and going again. And this is why we are sports fans. You have the highs are fantastic and the lows are awful. We're in a very, very big low at the moment. And I just don't think, although I'm not going on Wednesday because I can't afford to go. Simple as that. But I probably wouldn't be bothered based on this. And I'm very, very tempted not to go on Saturday either. See if somebody else wants to use a season ticket.
Yeah, as well as the situation, the tweet John ran out was talking about a boycott of things like shirt off his back, 50-50 tickets, and that's for me is a different.
That's not going to turn the fortunes of our on ice play around, is it?
No.
That will hit the club in the pocket, but it ain't going to get good hockey players playing good hockey again, and that's what we all want to see.
Yeah.
So I think 50-50 boycotts and not buying a shirt off his back ticket, I think is a little bit of a red herring myself. I don't think that, whilst there's some fans out there that probably do, feel that way towards the ownership of the club and the way it's all managed off ice, and there's quite a few, judging by social media today. The primary problem for me at the moment is how do we get form back into these players? And those sorts of things, whilst to some people they might be justified, that's not the primary way to get this club back playing winning ice hockey. The issues are training, player performance, and the right coaching. That's going to get some of these losses turned into wins, I hope.
Yeah, I agree. I agree entirely. Okay, enough about what's gone wrong. What happens? How does it get put right? We've mentioned that there's possibly two players coming in, but a lot of the things I've seen today concern the position of Corey Nielsen as coach, and a lot of people saying that they want him gone. Now, is that right? because when you look at it in completely devoid of everything else and black and white, we've lost 8 games in a row. That's not acceptable for a club of this size and standing within the Elite League, for me. We shouldn't be losing 8 games on the bounce. However, you then have to look at the record that Corey Nielsen has as Panthers coach, and does that give him some respite? Does that give him, a bit of a cushion from, possibly losing his job? I think I'll ask you all, and you can decide who comes in first. But should Corey Nielsen lose his job?
I don't think so. Not yet. I think if we get these 2 new players in, let's see what of an impact that makes. I think Corey's success in the past, and earlier this season, he's earned the time. I think let's see what happens. Obviously, if we don't get these players in soon, and we continue to lose games, then I do think that his job will become increasingly more under pressure. But for me now, no, not at this time.
Aaron?
No, I don't think Corey should lose his job. Should he receive criticism? Yes, I think he should. But no, I don't think you just go, see you later, Corey, and then expect everything to be, honky-dory all over again. The only thing I would say is last night I had a horrible feeling that Corey's tenure is going to end up similar to how Brian Clough kind of finished at Nottingham Forest. The greatest manager that Forest had ever seen, took him into Europe, achieved miracles in Europe, but his last memory was, relegation. And I would just hate it if Corey kind of ended his tenure with the Panthers on a sour note, because look, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and there are plenty of Corey haters out there in the world, and like I say, that's their opinion, but facts are facts. He is the most successful Panthers coach that we have ever had, and I do think that some people will actually finally realise that in the years after we have Corey. But he shouldn't be immune to people criticising him and asking questions of of his coaching sort of currently, and I think the only thing I would say is if it carries on and we don't see these 2 new guys and it just sort of carries on this terrible form that we're having, I think the club's got to come and make a statement one way or the other. I think they've got to either, if it carries on, they've either got to back him or sack him. But I don't think they should do the latter.
Okay. I'm delighted to say we've been joined by Andy Haywood, who has joined the podcast late as he's been out. But Andy, the question we've asked is, should Corey Nielsen still be in the job after the team has lost 8 games on the bounce? A lot of people saying that on social media today. Ant and Aaron have both answered before you, which you probably didn't hear. They say no. So what do you say?
I agree. I don't know who we bring in, and I think realistically, truthfully and honestly, I think it becomes Clark and Strack's job for the rest of the season, and then potentially beyond. And I don't think we're quite ready for that yet. The other thing is, as well, was I was chatting to someone on last night's game. I think it was after the second period. We were talking about, changes need to be made, and they mentioned, would you get rid of Corey? And I said, well, ultimately his job will be under scrutiny, and to be fair, rightly so at this stage, But from my personal perspective, if Corey goes, we still have to watch them players, and at the moment, it is them players that I have a real issue with at the moment.
Yeah,
and I appreciate that. he's big enough. He's been around long enough to know that it is a sport. It happens in sport. He's probably been through this before. Maybe not quite so volatile, perhaps, because I don't think we've been on a run quite so bad since he's been in charge. But he will know that he's under fire. But I just don't see who we bring in to replace him that's going to be better. And I don't see how bringing someone in is going to get anything out of this team that we're seeing at the moment. Because, yes, you can look at tactics. Yes, you can look at motivation and stuff like that. And that's where the coach will always come under criticism, or that's sort of his bread and butter. But he can't do anything about a misplaced pass. He can't do anything about players holding their sticks so stiffly that the puck is bouncing off them and then not controlling passes. He cannot do anything about people missing open nets, which we've seen multiple times. Maybe not yesterday, but certainly on Boxing Day with Bellini, Bussier's twice against Belfast. Things like that. They stand out, and there's not a lot that the coach can do about that. At those type of situations. And yes, confidence is low, and things need to be, players need to be either caressed or moraled, or get hair dryers thrown at them, the works. And I think it's probably got to a stage now where he realises that he will have to get tough now. He will have to change his style of coaching with this team. And some people argue it's too late and what's the point, but ultimately we're still a fair way off the pace. But Cardiff have got on an 11-game winning streak, and I am not for this 1 second suggesting that on Saturday we go on start an 11-game winning streak. But it's all it takes is to go on a winning streak, and all of a sudden you're back in the mix. Cardiff were fifth, and points behind us a few weeks ago. At the present stage, there's everything to suggest that we won't do it. But we've seen the team play, pretty well this season, very well this season at times, and hopefully we'll be able to turn it around if we get a couple of players that take it up a little bit. But I think ultimately, with regards, quality and stuff like that, I just think he's been massively let down by some of the players on this team with regard what they've shown us, particularly with the bright lights of the CHL, and what they've delivered to us, week in, week out in the league.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Paul, we'll come to you.
I think I pretty much agree with what pretty much everyone said so far. Should he go? Probably not. But the thing I'd say is that he's got to understand and be made aware of that the clock has to be ticking. He's probably under more pressure now than he's ever been, and he's got to find a way to deal with that. But again, I don't know what he does. I don't know where he goes. But at the end of the day, this is probably going to sound harsh, but that's what he's paid for. It's like take the modern day airliner. They can fly themselves. The captain is only really there. The pilot, is only really there for when something goes wrong. And it's very easy to be a coach when everything's going right. Look at the year we won the league. And we were talking earlier about players taking responsibility and things like players, their own personal pride. And look how people like Jordan Fox, David Ling did that. It almost looked at times like they were the ones running the team. So it's very easy to do that. But it's now, if Corey Nielsen wants to show that he wants to, that he can do what we all want him to do, now is the time to do it. And this is, and he's got to understand that pressure is there and on him.
Okay, Adam.
I think everyone's made really good points so far. I think if we got rid of Corey now, we'd have to write the season off. I think Corey probably played a really big part in bringing the majority of the players that are new to the country over before the season started. And I know what Andy was just saying there, that he feels, and so do I, that there are some players that are letting Corey down. Well, you've got to think of things from their perspective, because if their coach was sacked mid-season, what would they do? Would they, if it's possible, be even worse than they have been for the last 8 games? I just think that there'd be too much uncertainty by getting rid of your coach mid-season. And I know sport is becoming increasingly unloyal, and sentiment counts for less and less with each passing year. But we can't forget what Corey has done for the organisation. Things aren't going right at the moment, and there's nobody more unhappy about that than me. But I think that you've got to well, yeah. But I think you as an organisation have to conduct yourself with a bit of class. And I think to get rid of somebody whose, name and number is hanging from the rafters would be, a pretty poxy thing to do from the club. Now, if Corey feels that he's taken things as far as he can go, and he himself makes that decision, I think we respect that. Whether anyone tries to talk him around from that particular viewpoint, that's up to them. That's up to Neil Black and Guy Moran, because, they're the ones that can do that. So if Corey thought, right, I've taken this club as far as I can possibly take it, I need a new challenge, I need fresh scenery and a new start, great. That's Corey's sort of choice and decision. But I think if we get to the end of the season and we haven't won the league again, and hypothetically we haven't won either the Challenge Cup or the playoffs, I think what we're hearing now from the fan base will ratchet up even more, because there are a lot of people in the Nottingham Panthers fan base that are getting increasingly, and personally I think it's justified, uneasy about the fact that we are not competing for league titles. Our record over the years, and this goes back beyond Corey, so it's not just Corey's fault, but our sort of record and status in terms of going for the league title is abject, quite frankly, for a team of our history. But getting back to where I started, does Corey go? No, I don't think you sack him. I really don't. I think that Andy hit the nail on the head. It's the players that need to put a bit more in, because I'm sure Corey's putting everything that he's got and then some in. We know how much he cares about this team. We know how much he cares about the club as a whole. And I'm sure that he is probably hurting the most of anybody at this minute in time. So I will caveat that by saying that, he's spoken to the press now. He said that he wants 2 new guys in. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. He has to get these 2 players in, whoever they are, ASAP, to turn this season around. It may be that it's too late to try and catch Cardiff up or Belfast. That remains to be seen. But I think a lot of the fans want to see Corey, take some meaningful action to, break us out of this slump and out of this malaise. Because the thought of this wretched run of form carrying on well into the second half of the season, well, if we think things are bad now, they'll be even worse if nothing's been addressed to try and do something about the poor form, and we're into the end of January or the start of February. That's when things will get very, very heated. So I think Corey needs to diffuse the situation by making a few roster changes, bringing in a couple of guys that will really shake the rest of them up and say, hey, things need to happen. I want to change the fortunes of this team around, because I know that as a general group of guys, you're all way better than what you're showing the paying customers at the moment. So personally, I think Corey stays to the end of the season, and then everybody should take stock and evaluate. And then, if Corey's got another season in him and he feels that he genuinely wants to do it and he can, deliver us a league next year, well, we go along with that, unless the ownership and the management decide that, Corey's, run his race and they want to look to somebody else to try and make us a bit more competitive in terms of challenging for league titles.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are the Arsenal of the Elite League.
Yes.
It's better than being the Swansea City, let's not forget.
Paul, you wanted to make a point.
Yeah, I just want to pick one of the things that I'm saying, and it was the thing about people are saying on social media. And I think the thing that I've noticed the last couple of days, and it could be a knee-jerk reaction or whatever, but I mean, there are always the people on there who, shall we say, I wouldn't necessarily say that they delight in the fact that we're not doing very well, but they love to delight in the fact that they told the world that this was going to happen and everything. So you're always going to get your naysayers. That happens. I'm probably one of them. But I feel there's been a shift this last few days that people that are normally positive, extremely positive in some cases, what they're saying is changing as well. And that's, you're never going to please everybody. That's something that everybody's got to understand. There were people who don't like what we've said today. There were people who will say we haven't been critical enough. There are people who say we've been too critical. But when the attitudes of people start changing, that's when the club really need to start taking a look at what's being said, what's happening. Because when that starts happening, that's the start of a very slippery slope.
Okay. Well, I think really we'll leave it there. I don't think there's a lot more than we can say about an incredibly disappointing and testing time for the Nottingham Panthers. Paul, all that's left is to reveal the player of the week. You do this every week for us, so we will leave it to you to reveal the top three.
Players of the week. Yeah, players of Christmas.
Players of Christmas, yes.
Players of the Christmas of Doom. In third place, there's no great surprise to any of this, frankly. In third place was Robert Farmer. Second place, Ollie Bettridge. And in first place, a full 2.5 points out of 10 above anybody else. It was Mike Garnett.
No surprise there to anyone, and I think indicative of the comments we received from you. So many thanks to all those that voted, and many thanks to those that took the time to leave comments. We're sorry if we haven't read yours out, but they were an awful lot to go through.
And there were some that we couldn't read out.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. There was a lot of people moaning about shooting.
Yes.
I think that's what they meant. Yeah.
Right, all that's left to say is thank you very much to you for listening, and thank you very much to Andy Haywood.
No worries, thank you.
Aaron Lord.
Thank you, goodbye everybody.
Antoine Marie-Jeanne.
Take care.
Adam Reddish.
Keep the faith.
And last but not least, Paul Balm.
Thank you, and remember, there's always next year.
Beautiful way to end it. Thank you very much for listening to this special podcast. We'll be back again in the new year, but until then, thank you and goodbye. This edition of the Cat's Whiskers podcast was brought to you by the Bunkers Hill Hockley.